seen a second fish come up along this bank. It's a little farther along. We won't eat an Adams, one of my all-time favorite dry flies. Only one on the first cast. He will in the second. Uh-oh. The other thing that will promote good dry fly fishing is cloudy, overcast weather. The fish in the bow are very much sensitive to sun. They won't rise as well on a sunny day as a cloudy day. And probably the best time to find rising fish on the bow would be in late summer, September. If you've got an overcast, drizzly, gray, cold day, we'll get the little Beta's flies thick on the water and there'll be rising fish. I'm going to try and fish some grasshoppers today. It's a nice warm August afternoon and you can hear them making noise on the bank here behind us, and there's lots of tall grass around. So we're going to try and see if we can't get a fish to come up to a grasshopper pattern. It's one of the easier ways to fish the bow, although it's not always productive. When it is, it's really a lot of fun, and you can do it quite simply. You can fish them from a drifting boat, casting them in towards the banks, or you can wade and fish. I think we'll probably wade and fish this afternoon a little bit with them, see if they can work. This one has a blue leg. I never noticed that before. The things you need to be able to fish hoppers, of course, has to be the right time of year. You need water with not necessarily a lot of depth, but maybe 18 inches or a couple of feet of depth, and reasonable current flow right along the bank where the grasshoppers live. You need basically the hoppers to fall into water that the trout live in, and that means there has to be enough depth and cover right along the bank for the fish to be there. And you can fish it from a drifting boat or cast it against the bank and work your way up. It doesn't require the finesse that fishing the tiny little mayflies and caddisflies does. You can use probably a 5 or 6 weight rod and 3X tippet and a size 10 fly. You can see my hopper I've got here is actually smaller than the real one, and this is not a particularly big natural hopper that I've got. And you fire it up there along the banks and wait for somebody to come out and eat it. One of the nice things about the hopper fishing in the bow is that you really don't sacrifice the size of the fish. In a lot of other streams, if you're going to fish attractor dry flies, royal wolves or grasshoppers or things like that, you sort of make a concession that you're going to catch a smaller class of fish. And in the bow, that really doesn't have to be true. You can, while you may not catch the absolute biggest fish, the 7 or 8 or 9 pounder in the bow, you'll catch lots of 2 and 3 and 4 pounders on hoppers in the bow when it's working right. You have to persist with it. A lot of people fish a hopper for half an hour and it doesn't work, so they give up, and somebody else will stay with it, and at some point during the day, the hopper fishing gets good and they end up doing very well with it. So you need to persist. So fishing with hoppers in general is a pretty simple way to go. Every time I'm along one of these high banks, I give my right arm to be ambidextrous. Dave McLennan is a Pennsylvania Spring Creek fisherman who taught me an important lesson about hopper fishing that has to do with how you deliver the fly to the water. If the water you're fishing in flows right by the places where the grasshoppers live, it's probably not a bad idea to let your fly land with a little bit of a splat, because the fish in a place like this will be used to seeing hoppers falling on top of them, and the little splat of the fly will probably just announce the arrival of dinner. On the other hand, if you're fishing in a place where the fish won't see the hoppers fall in, but will just be used to having them drift into view, you should deliver the fly more gently so that your fly drifts into view just like the naturals they're used to. So I think if you give some thought to how you let the thing hit the water, it'll probably help you with your hopper fishing. Sometimes when you fish attractor dry flies, you kind of sacrifice the size of the fish. There's one. That surprised me. Ooh. Here he goes. Heading on down. That's about a 15 or 16 inch rainbow. I've got 3X here so I can lean on the fish a little. Any place I can go to easy to land this fish, so I'm just going to have to do it right here. That fish took fairly quickly. A lot of times with the hoppers, it's sort of funny. All the books and things say that they explode on them, but on the bow, a lot of times the big fish will just sip a hopper, just as if it was a little spinner. This fish isn't really a big fish, so maybe that's why he didn't do it. Let's head out here. Good. Not a bad fish. There you go. There's a fish coming up occasionally ahead of me here. He's not up real often, but we've seen him about 10 times, I guess, while we've been fooling around trying to get into position. There's not an awful lot of flies on the water, but there are a lot of caddisflies in these bushes along the edge of the river, and I suspect there's a few of them coming down to the water, maybe falling off, getting blown off. There he is, right in front of me. So I'm going to try a little caddis. See if I can show that to him. I thought about trying to get out here and get an angle on this fish, but I think I will be in water a little quicker than the fish is in, and I probably won't get a good float. This water is a little bit broken on top, and if you just show the fish tippet, you can sometimes fish straight up to them. You want to be sure you don't overshoot them. But if you just put it about a foot or 2 feet straight upstream of the fish, sometimes you can get them that way. He's not rising very often and he's moving, so it's a little bit tricky to get a reading on him. I'm going to intentionally fish a little short until I know exactly where he is. When the fish are in shallow water like this, you can get close to them because they have a relatively small window they can see out of. So as long as you're careful and stay behind him, you can get close. I'd feel a lot better if I could see him rise again. The cloud cover we've got today is a real benefit. There's very few flies on the water, and if it was bright, I don't think the fish would be up at all. But they're much more willing to come to the top on a cloudy day on the bow. And certain fish just like to feed on top. When you find one of those, they're more willing to do it anytime. I think I'm going to just wait until I see him again. You've got to treat each one of these fish when you find a single like this. Each one has got to be a project. You've got to kind of try and do everything right. Check your hook, make sure it's sharp and all that, and think about where you're going to fish from rather than just bowling your way in and starting to cast. The fish probably won't go away unless I make them go away, so you can take your time. You don't have to be in a big hurry about it. I'm so paranoid about spooking them that I never actually get around to throwing the fly in where it belongs, and you throw it short of them and to one side of them, and it's almost like it's a psychological game. You've got to just force yourself to actually throw the darn fly at the fish. He moved up. Oh, he came up twice in a row. Just sort of drape this leader over his shoulder. That might do it. Come on. That was right where I wanted it. But I guess it wasn't right where he wanted it. He's in the same place. That might get him. Just enough breeze to make it a little hard to turn over the leader. Oh, there he is, way up ahead. Fish is moving around. That might get him. Oh, he came up and tried it. It's a big rainbow. I can see the pink in his gill covers when he came up for that. I didn't stick him. We'll see if he'll come back. Sometimes they will. That makes you shake.